trotting across U.S. Congresswoman Nancy Mace's scorched earth, breaking down two pivotal Palmetto political races, and bringing you a case of alleged prosecutorial misconduct that will make your blood boil. I'm Will Folks, the owner and founding editor of FITSNews. Welcome to another edition of your Week in Review. Let's dig in. 7 months ago, U.S. Congresswoman Nancy Mace of South Carolina strode to the floor of the U.S. House of Representatives and accused 4 men, including her ex-fiancé, of being sex predators. She also called out the state's top prosecutor for being asleep on the job. Now, that speech has unleashed the floodgates, folks, criminal, civil, political. Mace called it her scorched earth speech, and in its wake, the earth has most definitely been scorched. There have been lawsuits against Nancy Mace, lawsuits by Nancy Mace, and perhaps most significantly, a state law enforcement division investigation into the individuals whom she accused of these crimes. There have also been related criminal cases, including arrests. One of them happened this past week. Now, on Sunday of this past week, our media outlet exclusively posted a video we obtained of Eric Bowman, a Charleston, South Carolina entrepreneur who is accused of assaulting an unnamed victim. We're going to play this video for you right now.
Give me my fucking phone, Eric! What are you doing? No, give me my phone! Give me my phone!
Stop touching me!
You are not throwing that!
Stop touching me.
Don't throw my phone.
You have 2 seconds to not touch me.
I'm not touching you. Give me my phone. I'm not touching you. Give me my phone.
Your phone's in the middle of the street.
Now, bringing in Jen Wood, our research director. Jen, obviously a graphic video here of assault. Now, shortly after we published this video, in fact, within 3 days, I believe it was, Eric Bowman was arrested and charged with first-degree domestic violence. He was also, shortly thereafter, denied bond at a hearing in Charleston, South Carolina that was attended by Nancy Mace. Now, Bowman's arrest, according to South Carolina Ninth Circuit Solicitor Scarlett Wilson, we're going to talk about her in a moment. According to Solicitor Wilson, his arrest was related, but not related. It was kind of a weird statement she made.
It was a weird statement.
To this ongoing SLED investigation that was sparked by Nancy Mace's floor speech. So I want to start with the arrest of Eric Bowman. Bowman had previously been arrested in the spring on a stalking charge. Is that correct?
Stalking and harassment.
Now, one of these has been dismissed. Walk us through the current status of the charges against Eric Bowman.
Right. So the stalking charge has been dismissed, but the harassment charge was just found over 2 days before his most recent arrest for first-degree domestic violence. Now, that charge, because he was out on bond for that charge is what played into part of what played into the judge's decision to not grant him bond in this most recent charge.
Okay, so we've got this case unfolding, but there was also a significant victory for Nancy Mace on the federal front in federal
Correct.
court, because after her speech, one of the 4 men she accused, Brian Musgrave of Fort Mill, South Carolina, retained Eric Bland and Ronnie Richter, 2 really solid attorneys from Lexington, South Carolina, retained them to represent him in a lawsuit against Mace. And that filing, which we reported on when it happened back in the spring, a lot of folks really felt Mace was vulnerable here based on that filing. But this week, U.S. District Court Judge Richard Gergel tossed the complaint, concluding that Mace, by making that speech from the floor of the House, was acting in her official capacity. She's therefore immune. Let me ask you this. Mace touted it as a victory, but you were following the judge's order. He wasn't entirely on board with this method of communicating the allegations.
Right. I mean, she does have immunity because the statements were made while she was on the floor of Congress. But, well, she has immunity from being liable. Was it right? I don't. It's a good question. And Judge Gergel, said, well, she can't be held accountable because of the Westfall Act and the speech and debate clause of the Constitution.
Yeah, so what remedy does that leave?
Right.
But here's the question, and I want to ask this because prior to the arrest of Eric Bowman, there was another Jane Doe
Hmm.
who filed a civil complaint against Mace's fiance, against another one of the individuals named on that floor speech, an individual who, by the way, lost his job after his company conducted an investigation into the allegations. We're not saying anything's related. He was not criminally charged. John Osborne, the tech executive down there in
Right.
Charleston, but he did lose his job on this venture capital fund in the aftermath of an internal inquiry. But Bowman's alleged conduct, Patrick Bryant, her ex-fiance's alleged conduct, and those being the focus of not only criminal charges, but this civil lawsuit from a Jane Doe, there's something to Mace's allegations. Can we at least agree on that? There's something to them?
I mean, yeah, I mean, just looking at what's gone on in the aftermath, I mean, one wonders if there may be something to it. I mean, it was like you said, scorched earth. She went scorched earth, and
Let's talk a little bit about the political. And I know you're usually we're here
yeah.
discussing
I don't usually do the political
court
stuff, but
filings.
because this is court filings, that's where I come in.
Yeah, but
Yeah,
I want to ask you politically. Let me ask you politically because this whole thing, let's put the merits of the civil and criminal cases aside for a moment. This whole thing has positioned Nancy Mace as a champion for
yeah,
victims, somebody who is standing up against a system that refuses to hold people accountable. We're going to talk a little bit about that system in our next segment, Jen, but how is this not a huge win for Nancy Mace, not just in the courts, but politically? I mean, she's basically the narrative that she has laid out in that speech is,
I'm not gonna lie. It's what has happened makes me think she might be a genius. I mean, it is. It. I think she was very calculated in what she did. I think it has played out well for her. I had questions when it was first happening. I was like, what is happening? It was just chaos. It was
yeah.
drama everywhere. And, looking back at everything that's happened subsequently, I'm like, wow.
Yeah, I'll be honest. We were leaked an advance copy of that speech back in
Yeah.
February, before it was given on February 10. And I got to be honest, I wasn't sure. Is she actually going to say all of this? Is this really what? Because it was just a thermonuclear detonation. And a lot of times we say that, we'll talk about stories.
Right.
And then, okay, the fallout is not quite what it was advertised as. But in this case, it has been, I mean, it sparked this huge criminal probe.
Right.
It sparked multiple civil lawsuits. And we're obviously waiting for some of these things to ultimately be adjudicated in the civil and criminal courts. But again, politically, I fail to see how this has done anything but really burnish Mace's bona fides.
Yeah, I think it is done exactly as she set out to accomplish. And this was months before she announced her intention to run for governor.
Yeah.
It is, I think it's kind of, looking at the polls that you wrote about this week, it has definitely worked in her favor, which, I mean, wow.
Yeah.
I wasn't sure which way that would go.
Well, let's talk a little bit about those polling numbers because obviously one of the top challengers that Mace is facing in this gubernatorial election here in South Carolina is four-term Attorney General Alan Wilson. This is a guy who has made a name for himself back in the Murdoch trial, and not only as the guy whose office oversaw that trial, but he actually took an important witness during that trial and did a hell of a job, I might add.
Yeah.
Did a great job. So he got, some personal cred in that as well. But this is a guy who has been very popular with the GOP base. This is a guy who entered this race as the presumed favorite, I would argue. Guy with statewide, he's been elected statewide 3 times already. He's a guy with a lot of name ID. But Mace has really stormed in with this narrative, calling him out.
Right.
And not only on these cases, Jen, she's called him out on some of these child sex abuse material, child porn cases where he's alleged to have been too lenient.
Yeah, with, plea deals and sentencing. And yeah, she's called him out on a number of things. I think, he's pushed back some, but, when it comes to cases involving children,
Yeah.
the pushback, I don't think it lands quite.
Yeah.
It doesn't land the way I think he wants it to.
Well, let's be clear. The polls that we've looked at up to this point have shown Wilson and Mace neck and neck. Some of the polls, Wilson is leading, some Mace is leading. We did see one from Mace's campaign. Let's go ahead and say from Mace's campaign in the aftermath of her announcement, which showed that bump. But with the big week that Nancy Mace had with these two huge developments, one, a major victory for her in federal court, getting the lawsuit against her thrown out, but then this Eric Bowman arrest, which would seem to be further validation of the claims that she made in that scorched earth speech. I mean, do you anticipate she'll see a bump in the polls following these developments?
I think she might. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I would be surprised if she did not.
Now, you're a newly registered South Carolina voter, Jen.
I sure am.
By the way, how's that feel? You went from Louisiana, one of the most corrupt states in America, to South Carolina, one of the corrupt states.
You know, in Louisiana, we didn't have a FITSNews calling out the corruption. So,
Don't you want to live somewhere, where you can count on these institutions, though? I mean,
is there a place?
Or is it more fun exposing them?
Yeah, it's kind of more fun.
So as a voter, though, I want to ask you another question. You've also watched some of the developments unfold in the race to replace Alan Wilson. Alan Wilson, obviously the current Attorney General. He's running for governor in a pitched battle now with Nancy Mace, but there are multiple candidates who are running for his seat, the office that he's vacating, the Attorney General's office. One of them, and I'm going to talk to Dylan Nolan about this later in the show, but one of them you have a fondness for. You like the cut of his jib.
I do. I mean, David Pasco, from his announcement, politicians usually like, so join me for a special announcement.
We won't tell you what it is. It's a big secret.
Everybody knows what it is. David Pasco's like, it is what it is. I'm announcing I'm running for Attorney General. Come on out. But then his announcement, to me, that was almost scorched earth as much as Nancy Mace. I think to me, he sees the problems, the problems with corruption in the state. And in his announcement, he laid out definitive plans to battle that corruption, including, which, got right to my core as a journalist, plans for counties and towns that are not responding to FOIAs. Yeah. Because that has been a problem that I've run into when I'm trying to cover these stories is I can't, they just don't respond to FOIAs. And what do you do? And he's like, I have a solution for that.
All right, well, Jim, we're looking forward to getting more of your analysis politically if you're comfortable with it. But now we've got a ton of news for candidates not named Nancy Mace. Stay tuned for that. So as promised, I'm now joined by our Dylan Nolan. Dylan, we've got some competition on the political analysis. Jen Wood.
It's kind of good to hear somebody who's not us talking about politics for once, isn't it?
I dug it, man. I did. But we do have so much news on the political front this week. We got a ton of folks to dive into. And I want to start with the crash out that was the focus of last week's show, the unhinged rant of Mullins McLeod, the Democratic candidate for governor of South Carolina. For those of you who didn't watch this, Mullins McLeod melted down in the back of a Charleston, South Carolina police car, conversing with dead lawyers, assailing his political rivals, basically losing his mind. One of the individuals he attacked said he was going to knock his teeth out was South Carolina Attorney General Alan Wilson, one of the Republicans running for governor. Now, there was also another allegation that Mullins McLeod hurled at Alan Wilson, namely that his German Shepherd Lucy was not really his dog? Is that what Mullins McLeod alleged?
Let's just roll the tape.
Yep.
Alan fucking Wilson. As you carry that German Shepherd around the people's house, like, is it even your dog? Well, let me tell you something. When I'm governor, Snoopy's coming with me, bitch. He's not some German Shepherd. And let me tell you, my father, Snoopy is more of a friend to me than you were to the people of South Carolina. When you paraded that fucking German Shepherd in front of me to drop this breadcrumb trail in this brilliant mind that somehow you were a dog guy protecting the people. McLeod for governor!
Now, Dylan, you had an opportunity to put this allegation directly to the Attorney General, did you not?
I did. I was down in Dorchester County last weekend, and I got to speak with a number of the candidates for governor, General Wilson being one of them. And here's what he had to say.
We got a 40-minute interview if folks want to hear about your policy agenda, but I think I would like to take my one question today to ask you, is that even your dog?
Yes, Lucy is our German Shepherd. We've had her. She'll be 7 years old in 2 weeks. So, yes, that is Lucy. And if you want to see a picture of her and our three-legged cat, Danger, sleeping on the couch last night, they were snuggling, so I took a picture of it. So I have that to show the viewers at home if they don't believe that I actually have a German Shepherd.
So did you see the picture of the cat?
I'm still waiting to be provided with this. For all I know, no, I'm just kidding. I've actually seen this dog in person. I am well aware. And that's actually why I found that portion of the video to be so funny, is because you can tell that Alan is the person who trained Lucy. Yeah. You know, like a really well-trained German Shepherd. You can always tell who the handler is. Yeah. And that dog and Alan are kind of inseparable when you see him in person. Yeah, and I met Lucy when she was a puppy. I have not seen Lucy recently, though, so I don't know. Beautiful dog. Very, very well-behaved German Shepherd. Definitely made me want to get one. So the Attorney General was not the only gubernatorial candidate you spoke with, Dylan, down in Dorchester. I want to ask you, we've been looking forward to getting Ralph Norman, 5th District Congressman, into the studio. You had the opportunity to speak with Congressman Norman at this event, didn't you? I did. Yeah, and I referenced this in my question to Congressman Norman, but you go to his part of the state, which is kind of the south of Charlotte area, and folks love him. They would do anything for him up there. You go to different parts of the state, you talk to members of the GOP, and a lot of people like him because of his ties with the Freedom Caucus. So people who like the Freedom Caucus will like Ralph, but he doesn't quite have the same name recognition. And so my question for Ralph was, what's the elevator pitch to people who might not know who you are yet, who might vote for you in this Republican primary? And here's what he said.
What separates me from anybody else is on conservatism, on less taxes, less government, less regulations. What Republicans campaign on and then falter once they get in office, I've stood the test of time. I don't talk the talk, I walk the walk. I'm a business guy. I didn't make a living getting a paycheck from the government. And that's why, to me, term limits is important. That's why, for me, prioritizing where our money goes. All of my campaign will be based on getting South Carolina ready to compete and really ready for the flood of people that are coming to our area. It's got to be conservative government. We've got to walk the walk, and I will do that.
You're founding member of the South Carolina Freedom Caucus. This is a bit of a legislative insurgency. They are not afraid to come and smash the GOP mainstream when it's necessary. Are there parts of the mainstream GOP agenda that you, from the bully pulpit, if you make it to the governor's mansion, would like to change to drive the state farther towards a conservative agenda? Absolutely. And let me give you a prime example that recently I in Congress said that we need to redistrict Jim Clyburn's district. We have 6 conservative Republicans. One in Jim Clyburn, who I like. He's a friend of mine. But he votes wrong for his people. He voted for Joe Biden, who let illegals across the country that not only killed Americans, but took jobs of Americans. He was cognitively impaired. He basically derailed this country. He appointed a Supreme Court justice that couldn't define what a woman was. All that to say is his votes are just opposite what South Carolina has. So let's get 7 Republicans. Let's redistrict. And for those rhino Republicans who are scared of getting beat, if they can't sell the conservative philosophy, Republican philosophy, over socialism, over what the left is saying in New York, the Mondani, what Gavin Newsom did in California, then they shouldn't be in office. Thank you, sir, and we hope to have you in the FITSNews studio.
Now, Norman is currently polling in 3rd place. If you look at most of the surveys we've seen, roughly in that 8 to 10% support range. Obviously, a ton of people are undecided, and he's got plenty of resources to plow into his candidacy if he wants Dylan Nolan. So with that Freedom Caucus connection, those are the folks that really seem to be tapped into the prevailing angst of the GOP electorate right now. Very viable candidate, potentially. Yeah, you went to his speech where he unveiled this campaign, and I think so far this has been the biggest budget, biggest production out of any of these speeches, and if that's an indication of the war chest that will back the rest of the campaign, that will certainly make things interesting. I will, however, report that coming out of Dorchester, he took the stage after Allen, and they were all delivering stump speeches. Of course, they tell everybody to keep their speeches to 4 minutes, which means that they're all up there from between 10 and 15. So, that's why they have to tell them to keep it to 4, but
Ralph, he's in his 70s, and he showed his age a little bit coming up there after Alan. Alan was very vigorous, and that's kind of a bummer to me because a lot of the stuff that's in Ralph's speech reads like it could have come off one of your opinion editorial pieces. It's stuff that we've been talking about for years, right? A true limited government guy, but he definitely did not have the same energy and vigor. And this is not just like my opinion. I spoke with a number of people who were in the room, and then even just running it through Opus AI, which is the AI clip software. Folks see these little captioned videos all over social media that look the same. They're coming from Opus AI, and it's what like everybody's using right now because it's an incredibly useful tool. But what you can do is feed it hours of video, and it will find you the most interesting 30 seconds. And it will break them into rows of clips that you can then pick from and then put on your social media. So I fed all of these speeches in there, hoping to pull some stuff to share with the people at home on social media. And the first 3 rows, I didn't see Ralph at all. And this is pulling like 24 results. So like the 24 best sound bites, you can call it, as determined by AI. He wasn't in any of them. And there's some great lines in the speech. That just means that they weren't delivered with the punch and the vigor that this AI, which I must say, on many occasions pulls the exact same clips that I'll be watching through as a video editor, dropping markers on my timeline where I want to go back to. Those are the same clips. So this is not a bad software. I think it's accurately representing what folks that I spoke with after this event said about the energy level.
Okay, so you Republican primary voters, AI software. Anyway, we'll see how he fares. Obviously, we want to get him in the studio and hear directly from him about his vision for the future of the Palmetto State, and we will have some tough questions for him. I've been a little critical.
I think you guys won't disagree on this, on the substance of a lot of these issues. Obviously, you and Ralph have gone back and forth on a couple things over the years, but I think on the meat and potatoes, you guys see eye to eye on a lot of stuff.
Yeah, I hope he'll come in. We'll have a lot to talk about if he does, and certainly, he's somebody who is a very viable candidate in this race. But another viable candidate in this race that you were able to sit down and speak with, Lieutenant Governor Pam Evette, another credible challenger, well-funded, supported by some very entrenched interests here in South Carolina, but also worth noting, Dylan, a candidate who has resources to put into her candidacy. Set this clip up we're going to watch with the Lieutenant Governor.
Well, I'll set it up and tell you that it is Pam Evette, as she emphasized both at the beginning of my interview and in her speech to Dorchester County, which she used as a very clever way to get everybody chanting, Evette, Evette, which was pretty clever. But yeah, we talk about more than just her name. She also tells me about why she thinks she's the person to lead this state.
So I'm Dylan Nolte for FITSNews, joined by Lieutenant Governor. Here's the first question for folks who don't know. Evette, Evette, how does one say it?
It's Pamela Evette. It's not as fancy as people want to make it out to be.
Well, thank you for taking the time to speak with me. You're running for governor. This is a crowded field, some great candidates. What is it that you feel separates you from the other folks running?
So I'm a conservative businesswoman at heart. I'm a conservative businesswoman. I'm a mom of 3. I'm a woman of faith. And I'm the only one that hasn't spent my life in the political arena. So I think that is a huge differentiator. You know, that's why the governor chose me to be his lieutenant governor. He wanted a business person with a fresh set of eyes. The other thing that separates me is that I've stood with President Trump from the beginning. So if you go back to January of 23 and you look at when President Trump came here to South Carolina to announce his candidacy, everybody was invited. The Trump team asked everybody to come and stand with them. And if you look at the field of people that I'm running against, I'm the only one that was there. And I wasn't there because it was in my political best interest, because there was no polling. There was no reason that I should have went. The reason I went was because I've been with him from the start. And when I was a business person, I put all my support behind him when people told me I was crazy, because I knew we needed a conservative business person. We needed somebody different in the White House that could look at everything with a different perspective. And that's the reason I went there in January of 23, because that is the same person. We needed somebody made of Teflon that wasn't afraid to stand up to the establishment, that would take his business knowledge and turn this country around. And you can see he's done that. It was a brilliant move on my part, I think, because in 7 months, he has done a ton. And he's done it with a lot of the principles he's learned in business. The art of the negotiation. We saw that yesterday with President Putin, right? I mean, he's a master at it, and there's nobody else that I think can do the job he's doing.
So we heard you just answered some questions from other media before we spoke. You were talking about negative campaigns, people going low. And unfortunately, Nancy Mace's team has been going low, dogging you out about not having yet received an endorsement from Governor McMaster. Now, I should say, we're very early in this process.
Right.
Is this something that you? But I would just like to have you have the opportunity to go on the record and address it. Is this something that is even in consideration at this point in the conversation?
So listen. The governor picked me to be his lieutenant governor twice, right? Out of all the people in the state he could have picked. Timing is everything. And what the governor said is just, it's early and we still have 15 months of an administration to go.
Let's not turn ourselves into lame ducks.
So, you know what I'm saying? I mean, I'm working hard and I'm going to tell the people of South Carolina why they want me, what sets me apart from the pack, what I can do, what business has taught me, and how I can help make their everyday lives better, and how I can help businesses make their everyday lives better, you know, and that's what the people want to hear. You know, career politicians, that's what I'm running against, will promise all kinds of things. I'm going to tell you what I can deliver. I'm not going to promise you things that isn't even my wheelhouse to get done. And that's how I hope to get the attention of the people of South Carolina. For 6.5 years, I've traveled the state. I've listened more than I spoke. I've been impactful. I've come up with initiatives. I haven't sat on a table and beat my chest about the things that I've accomplished. But I'll talk about that in the months to come and hope to earn everybody's vote.
And one last question. People from this state, I don't know that it's fair, but they seem to have a prejudice against people from Ohio. You are from Ohio. What do you have to say about that?
So I'm going to tell you a really funny story, and then I'll answer your question. So this came up, oh my God, 8 years ago when I first started to run. And the governor kind of laughed when somebody asked him. And he said, you know what? You can't blame her for that. She just wanted to be born wherever her mother was. And she just happened to be in Ohio. And everybody laughed. But what I'm telling you is, out of all the places in the world I could have come, I came to South Carolina. I built my business here. I turned it into a national company here. I created good paying jobs here. I raised my children here. And then I left my business that was thriving and growing to serve the people of South Carolina. And that was all by my choice, not because I needed to do it. And so I think that earned me my palmetto tree.
Awesome. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. It was a pleasure.
So, Dylan, as we mentioned, Pam Evette currently sliding in that fourth slot in the Republican gubernatorial primary, just behind Ralph Norman. Most surveys have her somewhere in that 6 to 8% range of support amongst the current Republican primary electorate. But she's looking to improve on that in a big way. A major ad buy coming up for the Pam Evette campaign, and we're looking particularly at two big college football games that are kicking off the 2025 season. South Carolina, Atlanta against Virginia Tech. Clemson welcoming LSU up to Death Valley. Dylan, I know you're all interested in those games, aren't you?
Well, I might watch, for the political advertisement purposes.
But anyway, Evette, we're hearing early reports that she is spending upwards of $150,000 on those two broadcasts. So that's going to be a heavy dose.
That's a big spend for this early in the race.
Yeah, and to be fair, that's broken down between her campaign organization and the super PAC that's supporting her candidacy, but still a major investment in her gubernatorial bid launching here just ahead of Labor Day.
Will, what's the thing that we always say her biggest problem is? Name recognition.
Yeah.
I mean, this is exactly how she needs to be spending money.
Yeah. Well, Dylan, boosting the name ID, obviously very important, but at some point, Pam Evette's going to have to show us what has she done.
Well, yeah, first of all, if she doesn't boost the name ID, she's dead in the water. So this is step one. She has to do that. The biggest risk that her campaign is taking right now is hitching itself to McMaster's wagon. And if you look at McMaster's polling, it's very favorable. But I don't know that it's very favorable because McMaster does things which people particularly like, but rather that he associates with the right people and keeps his head down. And, that works for him, but he's not running for re-election. She could be really putting herself in a bad position here by tying herself to that mast.
Well, a lot of folks have, as you just indicated, political pollsters we speak to say that Henry McMaster, while his support may be very broad, it is incredibly thin. A lot of folks just like him because they don't know that much about him, and he's been there for so long.
He's a pleasant guy. He talks like Foghorn Leghorn. He's got the pocket square.
He's affable.
Yes.
But
congenial nature.
We'll see if she's able to establish an identity of her own, and certainly these big ad launches here at the start of the Labor Day campaign stretch, we'll see if that helps her establish her own identity.
Well, there's another train, though, that she was trying to hitch on to, and that was choo-choo, the Trump train. I don't know if you noticed, she was really throwing some elbows there at other candidates for not being there at his 2024 campaign launch, and that was something that was not sitting well, particularly with General Wilson, because he was down there prosecuting Alex Murdaugh when all the political roadshow was going on for the 2024 campaign. So he's kind of like, well, I would have been there if I didn't have the duties of my office to fulfill. But obviously, that was a very important trial for him to get right. So he was not jetting up to Columbia to go grandstand.
So we've gotten to look at all these gubernatorial candidates, Dylan, but there's obviously another big race in South Carolina in 2026. In fact, from those who are watching this from out of South Carolina, a much bigger race, and that is the Senate primary involving veteran incumbent Lindsey Graham. And now it looks like there's one credible remaining opponent. And again, I don't want to dog out the other guys that are running. We got some guys.
I think it would be great to get them in the studio.
Yeah, we want to get
Mark
these
Lynch,
guys.
Thomas Murphy.
Yeah.
Especially Thomas Murphy. I've spoken with him personally, and I mean, he gave his leg for this country.
Yeah, again, can't argue that. Obviously, he made a lot of news too when he got kicked out of the Ralph Norman rally up there in Fort Mill. But as we look at the race, though, and the candidate who is more likely than
millions in the bank account,
the author of Project 2025, the guy who literally Trump is implementing his blueprint. This is the code, source code.
True MAGA. I mean, he has the MAGA credentials for sure.
Yeah, got the money, got the MAGA credentials. Of course, we're talking about Paul Dance, whose announcement last month we covered down in Charleston, South Carolina. He came into this studio, sat right where you are, laid out why he is a better choice for South Carolina than Lindsey Graham. Not a very hard argument to make, I would.
Well, and he also laid out the argument for why he was better than Andre Bauer. He was quite harsh to Bauer on our set, and when you spoke with him after his campaign announcement, Bauer has subsequently bowed out of the race, and he's taken a little bit of a different tone. I spoke with him about where he stands in the race now, and here's what he had to say.
Yeah, I've been in communication with Andre. I respect that decision. I think it was the right one for him to make. Look, he's contributed a lot to this state, but right now I'm the single guy who can take down Lindsey Graham. I've been at this for 12 years with President Trump since before he even announced for president. And what we did with Project 2025, what I did in the first Trump term, was really bring a whole new energy, a whole new way of fighting the fight at the swamp in Washington. That we're in charge here, we're going to deconstruct the administrative state, we're going to end this progressive era once and for all, and we're going to spread national populism throughout this land and make this, again, America first. Whether it's foreign policy, we're always going to ask, what is the best thing for the American citizen before we go and spend our treasure abroad and, God forbid, we spill the lives of our best, the military, before we commit them to any foreign war. It's only going to be something that's actually worth dying for.
Well, Dylan, it's going to be so critical for the anti-Graham candidate to consolidate that support behind one name. Otherwise, Lindsey Graham potentially here could sneak back into office for another 6-year term.
No, people seem to have a lot of confusion about how the runoff system in this state works, and I think that is obviously crucial to how these candidates position themselves and who they attack and who they don't attack. Can you just give our audience the basics on how this works?
Yeah, absolutely. For those of you new to South Carolina politics, the partisan primary elections, and in South Carolina, the Republican primary election for a statewide race is really where the action is, because Democrats have not won a statewide race in South Carolina since 2006. They have not won a U.S. Senate race or a governor's race, for that matter, in South Carolina since 1998. So we're going on 3 decades now where the race that really matters is the Republican primary election for statewide races anyway. But as we look at that process and how it works, it's very simple. If there is a race with more than 2 candidates, if a candidate does not win a majority of votes in the runoff election, i.e. 50% of the vote plus 1, then a runoff is held 2 weeks later between the top 2 candidates. And in a lot of cases, this favors incumbents with name ID, with money. But in the case of Lindsey Graham, where you have a lot of potential candidates drawing support against him, it could work against him, because if Graham ends up in a head-to-head runoff election against one of those opponents, look for that anti-Graham vote to coalesce behind whoever survives. But as you mentioned, Dylan, that's going to depend on whether or not that surviving candidate pissed off all the others.
Right. So this is why I think Paul, you hear him talk about Mark Lynch. He'll never say a disparaging thing about him. I think that he can totally envision a scenario where him and Mark end up taking this thing all the way to the primary day. And, maybe Paul gets 30 and Mark gets 25. That is enough to trigger a a runoff election, well, suddenly Paul's going to be looking at Mark's people and asking them to vote for him.
Absolutely. So obviously, this Paul Dance race is one we're going to watch very closely because of the national significance. But Dylan, I misspoke earlier. We were talking about the governor candidates, all the governor candidates that spoke to you down in Dorchester. Forgot to mention there was one who did not speak to you.
That would be State Senator Josh Kimbrell. And I mean, he's placed his posterior in this very chair. He came in, gave a great 40-minute interview talking about his vision for the state, where he thinks we need to go with taxes and whatnot. But since he's given that interview, he has been accused by his business partners of stealing some $2 million in a lawsuit filed up there in Greenville County. I was planning on asking him about that, and I was candid. Oftentimes when you're about to interview a candidate, their handler will be there, the person who drove them there, who looks out for them, will basically ask you, what are you planning on talking about? Particularly if their person that they're looking out for has been accused of multi-million-dollar fraud, in the last couple of weeks. And so I was candid. I said, you don't want to burn bridges with people like this.
Right. Tell them what you're going to ask. Sure.
I was very honest. I said, I'm going to ask about that. Of course. How could I not? It would be not doing my responsibility as a journalist if I ignored something like that, to just puff them up and say, so you want to have the tax rate be zero as well, Senator Kimbrell? Very well. But they did not want to engage with me after they learned that was what was coming.
Well, do you think that's, though, the reason? Because there are some other questions that could be asked of Senator Kimbrell.
I think they might have been nervous about that, but that was not the path that I was planning on going. But, tell us what you're alluding to here.
I mean, for those of you who have not followed this, we spoke about it on previous shows, but Josh Kimbrell is a guy very close to State Senator Matt Lieber, who's been implicated in a sex scandal where his wife called him out publicly on social media, also claimed that there were other politicians that his alleged mistress was involved with. There is apparently a private eye report related to some of these allegations. We don't know who commissioned that or where that exactly is or what it allegedly says or whom it might implicate. But the fact that there's a report related to it is certainly concerning for some of those elected officials. But with Josh Kimbrell, the thing that makes it interesting, Dylan, and we've talked about this before, as you mentioned, he sat in that chair and talked about how conservative he was. And when he was accused of this fraud, he claimed, oh, it's the deep state coming after me because I'm such a conservative. Well, hold on a minute. Let's go back to the last legislative session. This is a guy who completely abandoned the conservative position on lawsuit reform, who in fact refused to support legislation that he himself sponsored. He literally sponsored legislation that would erode some of this trial lawyer monopoly that we have on the lawsuit process here, wouldn't even advance his own bill. And this sudden flip-flop, a lot of people are like, well, wait a minute, what caused Josh Kimbrell to flip-flop on the lawsuit reform issue? And so, there have been some folks who are kind of putting some things together, and we talked about it on the previous show, but I wonder if he didn't want to answer some questions about that, his proximity to the Lieber scandal. That might be my guess of a better reason he dodged
I'm
it.
a journalist. I'm not a mind reader. But certainly that could be an awkward line of inquiry if that's the way that we went.
Folks, if we get our hands on that PI report, you'll be the first to see it. Again, we have covered that Matt Lieber saga from the very beginning. The state senator from Johns Island, his wife, a sitting school board member down there in Charleston, who publicly accused him of having an affair and then claimed that the alleged mistress, as we mentioned, was involved with other elected officials. Who are they? Well, stay tuned is all we can say. Dylan, a big week here in politics. You did a great job down in Dorchester getting all those folks on tape. Let's get them here in the studio and see what else they got to say.
Thank you.
So if you've followed our media outlet for any period of time, you know we've been incredibly aggressive at holding judges accountable and the powerful politicians who appoint them, fund them, and decide whether or not they get to stay on the bench. We've also been very aggressive in holding law enforcement accountable. In fact, if you followed our Andy Fancher's Badges Gone Bad series, he has been exposing law enforcement corruption across the Palmetto State. Today, we've got another facet, though, of our state's criminal justice system, which is failing. And I'm referring to the prosecutorial part of the equation, specifically South Carolina 3rd Circuit Solicitor Ernest Finney. We've got a case out of Clarendon County, South Carolina, that our research director, Jen Wood, is going to join me now to talk about. Jen, this is a case, I don't even know what to make of it. It's one of the craziest ones that we've ever seen. And we are in South Carolina, a state where crazy cases are just like every other week. But,
Yes.
But this one, there's something about it that just has struck a chord with a lot of folks. And again, we weren't the first to report on this case. Credit where credit's due. Charleston Post and Courier did a great job.
Yes.
bringing this to public attention. But you dug really deep into this case. You pulled all the documents, all the filings, and really laid out the timeline of this. Let's call it what it is, an injustice, if everything that's in these filings is true. But tell us about the case of Michael Wilson Pearson.
So Michael Wilson Pearson, and I have to be honest, covering these stories, I try to remain as unbiased as possible. This one was very difficult. I was angry when I wrote this story, but Michael Wilson Pearson was convicted in 2012 in Clarendon County for the assault and robbery of a man nicknamed Slick Gibbons. Apparently, 3 black males accosted him, tied him up with duct tape, beat him, and stole his El Camino. His conviction was based on one single print that was found on the outside of the El Camino. Now, it's unknown how that fingerprint got there. Pearson says he's never been there. Another individual convicted in relation to this crime, whose DNA was found on the duct tape, said he didn't know Pearson. There was no connection between the two of them. So it was, he was convicted by jury. They had moved for a the defense moved for a directed verdict during the trial. That was denied, and the jury convicted him. He was sentenced to 60 years in prison. He subsequently appealed that conviction, and the Court of Appeals overturned it. So he was headed for a new trial, and the overturning was based on the lack of evidence and the fact that the motion for directed verdict should have been granted. So the state of South Carolina filed a writ to the Supreme Court to review that overturn, and the Supreme Court reversed
reinstated his conviction.
Yes.
Yeah.
So there was Michael Pearson had hope for a little bit.
Yeah. So this is a roller coaster already, but we haven't even gotten to the
twists and
turns. So what happened after the Supreme Court reinstated that conviction?
Michael Pearson remained in prison. And in 2022, his co-defendant, Victor Weldon, whose DNA was found in the car.
It was on the duct tape, wasn't it? They put on this guy's.
Yes, it was on the duct tape. He was going to go to trial and took a plea deal with the prosecution. And during the plea deal process, he said Michael Pearson was not part of this crime. Wow. He was not a participant. I don't know Michael Pearson.
Yeah.
2022. So they did
3 years ago.
Right. They did a lie detector test on him, and he passed that.
Oh, wow.
So did anybody tell Michael Pearson? No.
Oh, wow.
In 2024, June of 2024, Michael Pearson finally got wind of this, and he filed a post-conviction relief filing.
Yeah, PCR, yeah.
Right. On his own, he wrote, I've got the handwritten, it's linked in my article. He hand wrote this application for post-conviction relief. Sat there for a year, and an attorney with the North Carolina Center for Innocence, James Babb, got wind of it.
There wouldn't have been any attorney in South Carolina, right?
Yeah.
We got to go out of state to find somebody that cares about these people who are sitting in jail wrongfully accused. But continue.
He took this case on, and he filed an amended PCR application on behalf of Pearson. In that amended PCR application, he cited case law. He went at it. Yeah. There's also allegations that in the process of Pearson's PCR request, Solicitor Finney told him he would let him out of jail. He would grant this if he agreed to never return to Clarendon County and not to sue the state of South Carolina.
Oh, boy.
Yeah.
So the CYA begins, Jen Wood,
right,
as it would appear.
Right. Now, Solicitor Finney submitted a letter to the Attorney General denying all of these allegations.
So he says he never tried to make his release conditional.
Right. So we'll see where that goes. But just yesterday, Thursday, so this is coming out Saturday. So on Thursday of this week, a second amended PCR application was filed. And in that application, Pearson's attorney says that despite a very stern order from South Carolina Circuit Court Judge Robert Hood, that all of the discovery has to be turned over to Pearson's attorney, all of it, the SLED investigative files, every file from the Sumter Police Department, everything tied to this investigation was to have been turned over.
Yeah.
It was not.
Hmm.
It was not. And then, in addition to that, apparently one of the other co-defendants in 2015 said the same thing that Victor Weldon said in 2022. In 2015, and they've got the evidence in the file that Michael Pearson was not involved in
So
this crime.
2 of the 3 people who perpetrated this crime, who admitted they
Right.
perpetrated this crime, have both said that this guy wasn't there.
This man was not there.
And they've got one fingerprint that they can't really explain how it got there. And it's on the outside of this vehicle, by the way. It's on the rear bumper. It's not inside the car. You had an appeals court ruling which said, hey, that's not enough. That's not enough, Judge. You should have called it then and not let it go to the jury.
Right.
But then the Supreme Court comes back. And look, we want to say we've always been very protective of jury verdicts. Jury, the jury verdict
does their job.
Yeah, and that's why on this Murdoch case, we've been so insistent on the integrity of the jury process because, it matters. It's significant. They are the triers of fact in these cases. And so it's important to note that. However, the appellate court ruling on this seemed to me, that was sort of my first red flag. But Jen, you're telling me that even after that, even after the initial post-conviction relief application that this guy filed, handwritten, the ultimate, one guy against the world. Yeah. But after that, he's been in jail for 3 years after they've known that a second person has said he was nowhere near it.
Yes.
Oh, wow.
I mean, it is heartbreaking. It's disturbing. It's just, it is.
Yeah.
It's kind of, you kind of just don't have the words for it.
Well, you're not the only one who feels this way. In fact, during the court hearing, Circuit Court Judge Robert Hood came out and discussed the state's potential liability here, which
he said the liability, the state, every day that Pearson is in jail, the liability of the state increases exponentially, and as it should.
Yeah. And one of our favorite commentators on this, Lawyer Lori, she was going off on this on her social. Let's take a listen. Let's hear Lawyer Lori's take on this.
Here's where it gets good. The next day, Mr. Babb filed that amended petition without letting Mr. Finney be the moving party. Mr. Finney then comes in on July the 11th and cancels the hearing with the original trial judge. He's all pissed off, so he canceled Mr. Pearson's hearing. But that original trial judge is not somebody you play with. He's been on the bench for far too long. He knows what he's seeing. And what did he do? He reported that solicitor to SLED, the South Carolina Law Enforcement Division, for investigation. Now, they don't investigate civil stuff. They investigate criminal cases. So Judge Cothran has reported the chief solicitor of that circuit to SLED to be investigated criminally for his handling of this case. And SLED is investigating. And SLED has told Mr. Babb, according to his filing, that the man spent all night going over the paperwork, and he said it's an open and shut case against Solicitor Finney. In the meantime, the Supreme Court has appointed a new judge, Judge Robert Hood, here in Richland County, to oversee this case. A hearing was held on August the 15th. I anticipate they're going to have another hearing real soon, and Mr. Pearson will eventually walk free after 15 years.
I don't want her on my bad side, Jim Wood.
Me either. I mean,
she goes after it.
Yeah, I mean, she makes some great points. And, I've heard from a lot of members of South Carolina's legal community, and they've all said the same thing. They are all just appalled by what is happening.
Well, then they're glad we're on this case, too. They're glad that you wrote that big article that really dove into it. And I think it's really sparked a lot of the ongoing discussion in the legal community. Certainly, a lot of other outlets are covering this and are going to continue to cover it as it moves forward, as they should. Let's talk, though, about what's going to happen next here. Jen, there's a new hearing scheduled in front of Judge Hood.
Mm-hmm.
What is going to be addressed at that hearing? And tell us when that is. It's in
That's
September?
September 29th and 30th. We've already submitted approval to attend. We will be there in person.
Excellent.
And that is to hear his post-conviction relief,
Mhm.
the arguments for his release.
Yeah.
I think a lot's going to come out. In the second amended PCR, Pearson's attorneys asked for sanctions to be levied against the prosecution for not doing what Judge Hood said to do. They want them held in contempt of
Yeah.
court. So, I mean, I think this is going to continue heating up as it should. I am anxious to see where this goes in court. I'm also anxious to see what happens, who's held accountable and how are they held accountable.
Yeah.
You know, to me, this is very unethical behavior on the part of the prosecution. I don't know if it crosses into criminal
Yeah.
criminal liability. That's very rare for a prosecutor to be held criminally liable
Yeah.
for actions. It happened in Duke in the lacrosse rape case,
Mhm.
but it is not normal. But at the very least, I would hope that the South Carolina Office of Disciplinary Counsel will review this.
Yeah, at a minimum.
Right.
At a minimum. Well, let's pull the lens back here a little bit because we're talking about this case, which is egregious. If, again, all of these allegations contained in the application for post-conviction relief are accurate. If these things are true, this is egregious. But I want to talk about how this is not necessarily happening in a vacuum in South Carolina. I want to back up to the case of Michael Colucci. We were gearing up to cover this in 2024. It got delayed to 2025. We ended up not even having a trial
Right.
because of a Brady violation, because of exculpatory evidence, which was revealed to an investigator, not disclosed to the defense, never told to the jury. Some have alleged there was a prosecutorial misconduct there. The prosecutor in that case has vehemently denied that under oath. However, there were real questions there about the investigatory prosecutory process and whether or not it was conducted correctly. You have also raised the question about selective publication and release of materials related to the Murdaugh case. And this was something that blew up earlier this year, Jim, with your report about these hidden text messages of Alec Murdaugh with his alleged drug dealer, check casher, money launderer, Curtis Eddie Smith, that conveniently never found their way into that big timeline that SLED and the Attorney General's office presented to the jury in Alec Murdaugh's case.
Mm-hmm.
Are we dealing with an isolated incident here, or is this a pattern of investigators and prosecutors trying to cut corners to get these verdicts?
I would love to say that these are isolated incidents, but I cannot anymore.
Yeah.
I mean, there is a pattern. This is,
Yeah.
we have three that we're aware of, three that have been brought to our attention.
Yeah.
We'd be dumb not to assume that there's
Yeah.
more.
But yeah, you were talking about this just before we came on. Think how many more of these cases are out there.
Right, and it's concerning. I mean, we get a lot of pushback when we talk about Murdaugh's conviction, and the fact that the jury tampering, should be investigated, the process of his conviction.
Alleged jury rigging, not just tampering.
Yeah, and we get a lot of pushback. But the thing is even with the most contemptible of defendants, the process matters, and it matters because of defendants like Michael Wilson Pearson.
Yeah.
That is why this matters.
Yeah.
If they can't do it right with Murdaugh, the Michael Pearsons of this world do not stand chance. It is it's sad.
Yeah. Well, here's the other thing that's sad about it is I think about this case. Obviously, this was a violent crime. There was assault of a high and aggravated nature, or at least first-degree assault. What was it? There was an assault tied to it. Well, it was a violent crime.
A burglary, armed robbery, grand larceny, kidnapping, and possession of a weapon during a violent crime.
Yeah, so it was a violent crime. But we look at consistently across South Carolina, Jen, we see so many violent criminals where the evidence is stacked against them, including crimes against women, rapes. We've got crimes against children where there's limited accountability. And yet in this situation, you've got a prosecutor that's seeming to go out of his way against a guy with questionable evidence. It makes me wonder sometimes, Jen, the agenda of some of these prosecutors, because you've got so many cut and dried cases where people need to be locked up for a long time, but hey, let's just let them go wander the street.
Give him a 5-year deferred sentence.
And then this guy's doing 60 years for one fingerprint that they can't even connect. It just make it make sense. We say that all the time.
Yeah.
Make it make sense. But I guess the bigger question I got to ask you as somebody who is really doing deep dives into multiple facets of our judicial system, how does any of this build public faith and confidence in the integrity of the system?
It doesn't. Do you have confidence in the integrity of our judicial system right now? Because I don't.
Yeah. No, I really don't.
I don't. I think, we've got judges that are put in positions, elected into their positions by lawyer legislators.
Yeah.
I mean,
they control their hiring, their firing,
Right.
their reappointment, their budget.
Right. Making decisions on their cases.
Yeah. And they basically control their schedule because they can say, oh, I'm not showing up because I've got a official duty over here. And they represent murderers. They represent rapists. They represent thieves. They represent white-collar criminals. And
we haven't even got into the civil aspect of that. And trust me, we are.
Yeah. There's a lot of crookedness here. And I don't know. We talk about it so much. And again, I don't want to harp on this being the only problem because there are a ton of problems. And this case we're talking about is not a judge problem.
No,
it's a prosecutor problem. It's a guy who should have, the moment he got that information, raised that issue with the court, should have taken it to this guy's counsel or to him directly. But like you said, he's sitting in jail for years and then gets wind of it and scrawls out this handwritten thing. I mean, imagine what that guy must have felt writing that filing.
I can't imagine being behind bars. And he's always insisted he was innocent. I mean, he's never, he's never wavered from that. And, a lot of criminals do. But I can't imagine being him behind bars and finding out that in 2015 they had evidence from another one of the people involved in the crime that he wasn't.
Yeah.
2015. And then to have your verdict overturned and then reinstated. Like, the roller coaster that this man has been through is heartbreaking.
Well, Jen, you've done amazing work diving on this. I trust you will keep us up to speed as this case moves forward at that big hearing in September in front of Judge Hood. And to everyone out there watching this, if you've got a story like this, if you've got a case like this you want us to investigate, please let us know. Because again, our mission here at FITSNews is to make sure that the justice system here is just, to make sure that it is fair, and to make sure that outcomes like this do not happen again. Because once again, if it can happen to the powerful, well-connected defendants like Alec Murdaugh, it can happen to anybody. And I'm going to tell you right now, our media outlet will not stand for it, no matter the case, no matter the notoriousness of the defendant, no matter the heinousness of the crime. If prosecutors, investigators, judges, if they break the rules, if they bend the law, if they try to manipulate the system to get a particular outcome, you better damn well believe we will hold them to task. All right, folks, that is a wrap for this week's edition. I want to thank everyone for tuning in, especially those of you who subscribe and support our journalistic endeavors at FITSNews.com. Your support empowers everything that we're able to do. Next week, the big month in review is back, 11 a.m. Friday, right here. Join us live on this channel as we bring you all the big stories that we have covered over the past month. Until then, again, I'm Will Folks. Thanks for joining us. We'll catch you next time.